Welcome back, astronomical learners, and I'm your host, Miss Deanna. So today is week 2 of the Freebie Friday and for July, and I wanted to introduce you to a free K through 12 executive functioning study skills questionnaire and educational scaffolding guide. So if you don't know what all that is, just hold on. I'm about to show you and we can get started. All right, so let's jump in. So just like the previous video, you're going to go to my website and you're going to see here, so you either add to cart or you hit download now, and it's going to take you to the PDF file. All right, so first off, again, legal disclaimer. This is an ebook. It's going to include evaluation inventory, scoring metrics, behavior action plans, but it is purely an educational scaffolding tool. So it's mostly for parents, educators, and tutors to identify cognitive strengths and weaknesses in order to adapt instruction for students. So is this a diagnostic instrument? No. Is this going to be used in place of an actual clinical, psychological, neuropsychological, or medical evaluation by a licensed professional? No. All right. So if your student is exhibiting any severe distress, please go to a professional. Do not use this in place of that. All right. So as we move down, I'm going to change this to a one page right here. Okay, so as we move down, I want you to know that I have included a little bit more terminology about the neurodiversity paradigm because the screener, I'm assuming that you already know a little bit. And this, when it comes to executive functioning, not everybody does know about neurodiversity. So I've included some terminology here and to understand that the primary tool is going to be the human brain uses these skills to self-regulate. So I want you to understand a little bit of the history behind it. So who do I pull from? So I want you to know the name Elizabeth B. Herlock. So she is a foundational clinical psychologist and researcher. She established the development is continuous in humans and it is predictable and is highly individualized progression and it's shaped simultaneously by biological maturation and environmental training. So she's the one that's probably the first one to say, hey, it's not just nature or nurture, it's both. And so she really demonstrated in a lot of her books that every developmental milestone possesses explicit developmental tasks. I have her book behind me, and it was published in like 1950s, and she, even though she was like born in the 1800s, but she has a lot of the early, what people would call today, probably gentle parenting, but for her, it was just parenting. And so I also like the work of Jean Chall. She gave us the stages of reading development. And then, of course, we have the neurodiversity paradigm that we know today, which includes asynchronous development, which means not everybody's going to develop on the same pattern or scale. And so, what does current science demand? So, modern neurocognitive data has overturned the myth that executive functionings are rigid, isolated brain modules that mature at a universally fixed rate. Researchers have established that real world performance is highly context dependent. It's profoundly variable and directly tied to a student's transient emotional state, environmental stressors, and their intrinsic, that means internal motivation. So, what I want you to take away from this, even if you don't download this PDF, is that executive functioning is deeply intertwined with oral language, also safety, syntax, and literacy development. This is why advocates like myself, we are fighting for literacy as a civil right because it is deeply connected to behavior. So I've included here a K through 12 developmental trajectory. So this is mostly US based because I am US based, but if you're in a different country, you're welcome to apply this to your education system. Now, I've included two subsystems here. There is cold executive functioning and hot executive functioning. And so the timeline blind is going to outline those twin paths. And I don't exclude neurotypical students. I include them as well. But you want to understand most of this is going to happen with a neurodivergent student. So I apply those terms in here for you as well. And I include it all the way up to the high school level. So what is the core lesson for a caretaker? That the failure of the model commercial, whatever who's trying to sell you brain training, the problem with that is that we have to recognize that the language is the core conduit of executive control. So the internal self-directed speech is the specific tool that the human brain uses to guide goal-directed behavior. We cannot remediate executive dysfunction in a vacuum. So essentially, when we strengthen a child's foundational oral language structures, narrative macro structures, advanced syntax, reading fluency, we are fundamentally expanding their real world working memory, their impulse control, and cognitive flexibility. You can't just focus on fluency, ignore the rest. Scaffolding must match the child's dynamic neurotype. So instead of just trying to force a neurodivergent brain into a neurotypical timeline, our job as adults is to provide the explicit, systematic, and highly structured linguistic routines that are going to empower them to map out, self talk, and successfully navigate their own unique cognitive profile. So, Part one is going to be for the elementary K through 5 students, and this is obviously not done by them. It's done by the parent adult or the observer or both. It's going to be filled out entirely by an adult who has regular opportunities to observe the students' daily behaviors across home and school environments, and it's going to track the operational real world execution of tasks from an outside perspective. So essentially, it goes through and you fill it out to where you see fit. Now, part two, this is also for a K through 5 student. This is the elementary student self-report. This is for if the child's old enough, either you help them do it or they're going to do it. And so it's very child-friendly questions because their input matters. The part three, the secondary inventory, is for older students. It's going to be grades 6 through 12. So this is for them independently. It's an independent self-assessment profile because once they enter middle and high school, they are navigating advanced academic terrain and processing multiple abstract viewpoints. Now, take this with a grain of salt. If your situation, if your 6th to 12th grader does need help, help them. Use this at how it will help you, essentially. And so then also part four, we have the master scoring analysis and interpretation. So we have both of the parent observer and the student self-report, and then we have just the 6 through 12 student self-report. So you want to understand there's going to be a strength zone, an inconsistent emerging zone, and a structural barrier zone. So what do you do with these? So if you have a high discrepancy, if you have a low adult score and a high child score, this is going to guide you on how to do that, or a high adult score, low adult child score. This is kind of to accept that bias may occur because, to be honest, a parent or a tutor that's invested is going to be different than a teacher or a psychologist or somebody who's more of an outside observer. Also, I've included here the tri-caretaker action matrix. So what does that mean? That means that any area of weakness that's uncovered, caretakers or any stakeholder must work in harmony to provide systemic structural support. So it means the parent, the teacher, and if you have a tutor or a nanny or anybody else who is working with the child. So an example is like if it's a time management and task initiation issue. If the underlying deficit is the response inhibition, then the student's brain cannot estimate the distance or find the clear baseline required to transition from their resting state into a non-preferred physical task. So in a K through 5, a parent could use open-ended questions, ambiguous virtual prompts, like you don't want to use ambiguous. Don't just say, "Oh, go clean up." You want to replace it with explicit. You want to say, "Oh, first, can you get your backpack? Then, can you get your shoes on?" That kind of structure. For teachers, I've included here. You want to have this behavior-specific praise. So excellent job clearing your desk, and not like, "Oh, you're just such a good student." Don't make it ambiguous. Make it specific to the behavior that you want to see. Also, for the parent action plan when they're older, you want to establish delicate, explicit schedules, and you want to understand that they're going to need structure, but they also need autonomy the older they get to create that structure themselves. For the teacher action plan, for the structure in the syllabus, you want to, and which I've seen a lot of schools kind of adopt that model, is give an explicit expectation so the student knows where they're supposed to be. And then for tutors, we have to work all the way around that. You want to spend the first few minutes of a tutor session building that rapport, building that relationship with a student, and figuring out, hey, did they have any issues that they want to address first, that they want to talk about, and dismantle that kind of awkwardness and create a safe environment where they can play and make mistakes, and it's okay if they do make a mistake. So I've moved that down here. Section 2, I've given you tools about concentration, working memory, giving you tools about information processing and metacognition. And so you obviously will be able to see this yourself, but one resource I did include here as well, which really helped me as a parent advocate, is the International Dyslexia Association of Georgia YouTube channel, where they have a webinar that is web evidence-based executive functioning interventions to improve academics of struggling readers. So I highly recommend that webinar, just because it really explained to me, when the school could not, that a neurotypical student usually masters executive functionings at the minimum age of 12. It can be any age above that where they might master it, and that's a neurotypical student. A neurodivergent student, it can be anywhere in between that. Like, let's say, like, I was a kid where I was doing a lot of things early, but maybe academically I wasn't as inclined in some areas, where it could be the opposite. It's going to be asynchronous. It's going to be different for each kid. And as well, I put the terms of use. And again, just like the screener, I invite, if you have any critiques, or if there's anything I didn't include that you'd like me to include, if this is helpful, if it's not helpful, let me know. Just because I'm interested in creating more tools that can be helpful for advocates, teachers, parents, or fellow tutors like myself. But essentially, if you did enjoy this, I do want to remind you that it is July. There are free ebooks available. You don't even have to just take mine. If you want a free ebook, you can go there. But when you go to the website, I do recommend my first book, Astronomical Learning, where it's kind of my tutor philosophy. And then also, like in my previous video, I've said my parenting philosophy is in my second book. But they are both available for free. Um, but again, that's just my recommendation. But thank you so much for watching, and make sure to like and subscribe so you'll know about the next time that I have Freebie Friday happening.